Here's the thing with the world of Elysium. The world of Elysium is a fictional world, but the fictional world that is aware that it is fictional. In a way, like I'm simplifying, of course, but in a way, you could think of Pale as what happens when a reader puts down the book and puts the book away.
In the absence of any new stories in the Elysium universe, the community of fans has spent most of the last 6 years turning their attentions to dissecting the complicated and fascinating world of Disco Elysium. No topic has invited more discussion and theory in the fandom than that of the Pale, ranging from being a metaphor for the real-world threat of climate change, or merely just an alternate version of video game Fog of War that you uncover as you discover more of the game's map. The really beautiful characteristic of Disco Elysium is that it does encourage those kinds of interpretations. From the very outset of the game, it is put upon you as the player to decide who Harry once was and will be from that moment on. And this world is also not afraid of you applying your own version of things to many other elements of its characters and the stories they have to tell.
Behold, you have no idea who this thing is, do you? Whatever it is, at least it's dead now. There's clearly rigor mortis on your face. Or wait, is that an expression? Are you trying to make an expression with that face? Please stop. It's horrible. You're scaring yourself.
There's also been a ton of speculation about who, or rather what, Harry Dubois is. Why can he talk to the city through shivers? And how is he able to foresee things that others cannot through skills like Inland Empire? And what questions do we ask of ourselves as contributors to this story? Are we role-playing a detective, or are we closer to a puppeteer? Someone who is perhaps viewing the events of the long-rumoured Feld playback device. My personal belief is that the Pale, the protagonist, and the player all serve to work as a cooperative yet compromising force that delicately balances to keep Elysium alive. As I explain all three of those aspects, I hope I can remain coherent, but given the pounding headache I've had from thinking about this stuff, I don't want to make any promises.
A frisson lifts the hair on the back of your arm. Wind sweeps the surface of the bay.
The world is a suzerainty of Revachol.
The first thing we all need to establish is what the Pale actually is. It is the key to understanding all of the aspects of this bonkers theory. So within the world of Elysium, the Pale is something its inhabitants know and understand to be the very existential threat that it is presented as in the game.
Are you sure you're sure? Your colleague seemed adamant. Okay. The Pale is the most dominant geological feature of the world, Detective. The separative tissue between the islas. It is the interisolary mass.
From the perspective of the player, it can be described as being similar to that of a person's memory of the world they find themselves in when reading a book. As you are a part of the world, it can be as recognizable to your mind as your own home. The characters as familiar as your own friends and family. They come as second nature. But what happens when you finish the book? How much of that remains when you stop reading? As you distance yourself from the world of that book, the Pale begins to grow. The Pale slowly consumes those clear ideas of that fiction you and the author had spent so much time building together. You've moved on to new worlds, new discoveries, or rather you found yourself in a completely new Isola. The wider world of Elysium is made up of continents and countries just like our own, but although there are of course huge bodies of water, the primary separative tissue is the Pale.
Isola is a Messinian word for a continent of matter, enveloped on all sides by the Pale. Also, isolation, or landmass. We used to believe there was only one. In the last 4 centuries, we have discovered 7. Windy, Seol, Samara, Ilmara, Grad, Katla, and this, Insulinde. an oceanic isla. It comprises mostly of water. Muindi is the largest, Katla the coldest, Insulinde the bluest. What can I say? Each is perishing and dear.
Now in Disco Elysium, of course, we find ourselves in Martinez, a district in Revachol, in an area called the Insulinde, where, as far as we know, there isn't too much power to be worried about. The same cannot be said for Katla, however, way off to the northeast of the map, or the ERG found way off to the northwest in Ilmara. It cannot be said because those corners of the world we talk about do not have a reader. There is nobody playing a character in that corner of the map. They hang on to the threads of existence through the vehicle of things like encyclopedia, shivers, or other references to Elysium lore. The Almighty Grad maintains a fragile existence simply by being referred to in the game.
The turn of the century revolution? Don't answer it. It's a trick question. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad, though by the end, nearly the whole world had gotten involved. It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Marzolf came along and overthrew the government.
A faint memory or knowledge of its presence is enough to stave off total damnation, but it lives a life consumed and surrounded by pale, cut off from the vehicle that would breathe life into it and dispel the power once more. That vehicle is you, the clarion call, the infernal engine.
There is a radio in the distance, a radio of the world, playing sounds. Good morning, Elysium. Soon you will return to the world.
Hours turn to days. Soon we will get up again and go through it again. Finally we know what the infernal engine was outside. The clarion call. It was him. He is the infernal engine. He never stops. He only gets worse.
Life gets hard, but we go on.
He doesn't understand that he's the one who has the power to stop it. He simply can't imagine that one little boy could be that important. Is it really me? But it's only a story. It's not real. It's only a story.
In the 1980s, there was a film called The Never-Ending Story. The film follows a young boy by the name of Sebastian who runs into his favourite place in the world, a library, to get away from bullies at his school. On this visit, he finds a mysterious book called, you guessed it, The Never-Ending Story. Essentially, the premise was that the book was a very real world that came to life as Sebastian read it. Blank pages would continue to be written as Sebastian went along that journey side by side with the world and its characters. This is the best real-world comparison I can find for how the reader is a master of a book's fate. If you stop reading halfway through Lord of the Rings, what is to become of Aragorn? He is stuck in limbo, awaiting your return.
Don't you know anything about Fantasia? It's the world of human fantasy. Every part, every creature of it is a piece of the dreams and hopes of mankind. Therefore, it has no boundary.
Another fascinating element of the never-ending story is a concept called the nothing. In the original novel, this is explored much more deeply than it is in the film, but we can find parallels with the Pale. The nothing is essentially created by a human's lack of imagination or reluctance to read books. manifesting as a mysterious and dark parasite with the sole intention of running the magical universe of Fantasia into extinction. Players of Disco Elysium then share a similar role to that of Sebastian, in that by playing the game you are breathing life into a fictional world, with each new day that passes in Martinez reflecting that of more pages being written in a book. The Pale and the Nothing are only kept at bay by human beings like you and I, playing, reading, watching, keeping ideas alive. So what then becomes of Elysium when you save your game and quit? Sure, it stays alive while you play it, holds on to reality as you think about it and talk about it with your friends, but how many of you stopped playing 5 years ago after that first run? What's left of your Elysium? The protagonist in any story is the vehicle to it all. You are guided by their hand in a book, you follow their lead in a movie, and in Disco Elysium, you're in control of the protagonist who is the very fabric of existence. The atoms of reality form around you. Perhaps that's why you can only zoom out a certain distance. Or did you ever notice how the game has a black vignette around its edges at all times? Could it be that the world outside of the peripheral vision granted to you by the protagonist simply doesn't exist?
Do you remember your wife's hand on your face? You know who I am. I'm the bad day. The one where you ask her, and then later in the streets, wandering. It's the worst day of all time, Harry dear. And it's coming. She will hear about it on the phone. You found Elysium. Everything. The Pale and the Islas. On the surface. The outer magnetosphere. Burning, furious truth. 8,000 years of written history. You really dropped the ball, Harry. 4.6 billion people. And you failed every single one of them. You really fucked up.
When you consider what I've been rambling about thus far, the bloated corpse of a drunk has a much deeper and more serious meaning for the consequences of Elysium if Harry gives up. The fabric of reality will collapse. Harry Dubois, the protagonist, the key, the infernal engine, he's dead. The bad day came and he couldn't handle it. So what's left of Elysium? Complete evaporation. If there is no longer the means to read the book, to continue the journey, for this man to form atoms around his every step, then the world is gone forever and it's not coming back. Unless, of course, you start a new game. Like any book, any game, any world or story immortalized as media, you can always grant it the power of rebirth. If you imagine how many times this fictional world has had life flowing through it, millions of players picking it up for the first time, the obsessed researchers who are diving back in for hidden dialogue, or the kind-hearted communard making their 19th attempt at the fascist run, they would all leave shadows and scars in this fictional world we all share. I wonder then, as I think back of how much is foreshadowed in the story, was Disco Elysium trying to tell us this the whole time? Could that be the reason Inland Empire communicates feelings of foreboding or a sense of something already known? Not because they have faint memories of work completed before the deluge of drinking, but because fragments of the world before are still present. Could it be that the game is aware that we've all done this before?
Thank you, Lieutenant Kitsuragi. Just to clarify, I do not think interisolary and troponetics are a hoax. Pale produces global phenomena. It's proven. However, what has not been proven is total memory loss after drinking too much Komodo Red. Honestly, I think he's just lying to us.
But Detective Vigmer, he has blanked out before. Yes, a couple of times. After some of the more serious benders. One was after the two drunks case, the other when we looked into that mural.
So you don't remember not remembering. Beautiful.
A long-rumored element of Disco Elysium's meta-level, multi-wall breaking nature was something called the Feld playback experiment. When you speak to Trent Heidelstam at the Feld mural, he will explain that Feld were working on a prototype device which seemed to be similar to that of a VHS player or maybe even a primitive version of a video game. So why do I care then about this mysterious piece of technology that only gets a brief mention in the game? If we imagine that those prototype Feld players were not lost to time, let's say perhaps that the Morrowlands not only recovered it, but were able to use it to record events in Martinez, could it be that we are advancing the world through our actions on that very same device? If we briefly go back to the ideas presented in the never-ending story, we should also be able to establish how a video game with similar elements can become an all-encompassing meta. For example, you as the cinema goer view the world of this story contained within the roll of film flashing on the screen frame by frame. Yes, you are in a movie theatre, but it is that continuous reel that houses the story of Fantasia. In the context of Disco Elysium, you could see the PC or games console as the movie theatre, but then that world is contained within the Feld playback device. There's rolls of film flicking down the side of your screen with every new option you select. It's for this reason I do believe that the events and the world of Disco Elysium are being viewed through a Feld playback device. There are some signs in the game that this is the case. The dialogue, for example, appears on Feld tape, just as the main menu options do too.
What if the words are not directed at the people of Martinez, or even the coalition aerostatics above the city? They're meant for something above even those.
There is also the line of dialogue from Inland Empire when you light the heavy fuel oil on fire, which seems to indicate that the game or the message was communicating to something way above the sky. Could that have been us? It could be argued that it was indeed, and we are playing the game via that same device. You take control of the protagonist and are then responsible for every step he takes in this world, not least the ones that keep you alive, of course. And although there is no combat in Disco Elysium, you absolutely can die, in a literal sense and now, in my head, a meta sense. If Harry suffers a heart attack from sitting on a chair, you get a fail state and find yourself back at the main menu. Load the Feld tape, try again. Should you go for the Hobocop life and sleep in a dumpster, the game fails. Back to the Feld tape on the main menu, choose the option to continue, and we load back into the world and take control of that protagonist again. Or is he your protagonist? Or is he another one of the many scars left by the shared hive mind of Disco Elysium players? As I've reflected on this theory in recent months, I've been scouring through the archives of my thought cabinet to try and find a coherent explanation of what I'm trying to say, and I stumbled upon one titled The Prestige. During my interview with Argo a few months ago, he mentioned to me that The Prestige is the most disco film out there. I remember at the time not really thinking too much about it, but decided to explore it for this video. And I think it is the perfect explanation for the relationship between the player, the Feld playback device, and our protagonist. Fair warning, there will be spoilers for The Prestige now, so if you haven't seen the film, I suggest you press pause here, go and spend 3 hours watching it, and then come back and enjoy the rest of this essay. So The Prestige is a film about rival magicians in Victorian London, and one of its central mysteries revolves around a transported man trick performed by Alfred Borden. Essentially what he's able to do is walk into one box and then instantly appear in another. He does this by having his twin brother stay in the other box. And as you'd expect, there are plenty of themes in the story around identity and the sacrifice of the self, which are made to maintain that illusion. Neither man can live their own lives because the trick requires that only one of them exists. Hugh Jackman's character Robert Anger is where we find our disco now. The rival magician cannot work out how Borden is pulling the trick off, and he seeks out one Nikola Tesla to see if there is a more scientifically driven solution to outdo his rival. Tesla provides Angier with the means to clone himself through a box, which uses some sci-fi electromagnetic field mumbo-jumbo to replicate whatever is contained within it, including that of a magician and all of his own consciousness. With the original Anya being dropped into a tank of water, whilst another new clone appears elsewhere on the stage, he pretty much kills himself every single time to give birth to a new clone of himself, all in aid of achieving greatness. Now, in the context of everything we've just gone over, let's consider Harry. Every time you reload a new save, Harry emerges anew. The old Harry, the one who died, is gone forever. But the world continues because you keep pressing play.
What if you didn't lose your memory? What if something in Martinez came and stored it all away, for you to slowly open one box at a time, so you can choose which parts to keep? Keep almost none of it. Only the flowers on the windowsill. Only the distant sound of a radio. Lose all the actors, the dark shadows. Leave only the still lifes. The blissful distant wash of waves. If everybody knew, you never did. She'll be coming soon. That is all.
What is for sure is that Harry does have fractures of his former self left intact, and we are often asked the question of, who is Harry really? We have the same frame of a consciousness in there, the remnants of his skill sets and his core memories, but what is the identity of a person? What happens to those events and experiences lived out by the clone? How many alternate dimensions have been travelled by those of us that held the failed playback device since 2019? How many clones of Harry Dubois in this world have we created?
After life, death. After death, life again. After the world, the pale. After the pale, the world again.
That's what those words were telling us all along. After it all dies, it shall return. The game told us all along of our responsibility to this world. The existence of Elysium depends on the balancing of those scales, but the player is the only one in the free with an executive control.
No, you are the miracle.
It was you, coming from the west, from the whirling. You were coming.
The moral of our encounter is, I am a relatively medium life form, while it is you who are a total extreme madness. A volatile simian nerve system, ominously new to the planet. The Pale too came with you. No one remembers it before you. The Nidarians do not. The radially symmetrics do not. There is an almost unanimous agreement between the birds and the plants that you are going to destroy us all. It is a nervous shadow cast into the world by you, eating away at reality. A great, unnatural territory. Its advent coincides with the arrival of the human mind.
If you stop viewing this world through the lens of the failed playback device, the protagonist can no longer serve his role of being a consciousness within Elysium that you communicate with. If you cease communicating with the protagonist, the world will continue to exist while the memory of it remains vivid, but as time grows between you and that last save state, the Pale grows stronger and takes over more of the world. So the player, the Pale, and Harry Dubois all serve to work in unison to keep a fictional world alive, to enable you, the reader, to keep the world of Elysium close to you. Without us, it will die. The responsibility we have to roll the dice and keep on fighting has never been more important. So now the next time someone asks an absurd question like, why are you playing Disco Elysium again, you now have the most noble answer. You are the first and last defense against the destruction of this beautiful world and its 6 billion inhabitants. This theory isn't just about decoding Disco Elysium, it's about recognizing the power of stories. Every book, every game, every world we love, it only exists as long as we remember it. So keep playing, keep reading, keep fighting the Pale, because in the end, we're all that stands between Elysium and oblivion.